Hey everyone, welcome back. Now, to be honest, I've been meaning to do an Endless Matrix video for a few months now, but while I was procrastinating, someone inspired me to make this brief follow-up video for Delta Vault instead. I don't know how useful this second video will be to most people, but as it is, there aren't a whole lot of topics we're doing videos on anymore, so I figured I'll take what I can get when it comes to video ideas. So here's what's up. In short, I was still curious about the drop rates of the armors because it didn't seem to be the same for each of them. Last time, I gave an estimate based on what I'd seen from other players and myself, but I've since gathered some actual hard data on this subject. The drop rates of the armors were roughly 10%, 6%, and probably 2%, and this is with a sample size of over 400. The total chance to get any armor was around 18%. These results were pretty similar to what I'd guessed before, but I know there's still a very good chance that the actual drop rates still may not be exactly as they appear, since a huge sample size is needed when dealing with such small percentages. I know some people like Cactus Chan, for example, who's gotten 3 diamonds and no golds after 50 attempts, would really impact these numbers if his data was included. Of course, it would be best if I could get the data from everybody who's ever killed it, especially since there are obviously many people who did it a few times and got nothing, which might dilute these values. If you do want to contribute your data, you can put your numbers in the comments and I'll add it to the spreadsheet that is linked in the description. It's not that it's that important to know these numbers, but personally, I think it's kind of interesting to look at. Anyways, at this point, I'll probably die if I ever have to fight this boss again, after doing it so many times. But before I call it quits, I went on a streak to try and make a record in speed. Yeah, I know the battle in the last video was supposed to be fast, and it was, but the fact is, I was still trying to demonstrate a safe build and safe method of doing it, or else the video wouldn't have been useful to anyone. This time, I wanted to go all out. I like to do speed battles, not because they are necessarily effective, since they usually aren't, but because it's a way of figuring out what sort of direction in your build and strategy have the best tendency to increase speed, and looking at any sort of patterns I see. For example, does getting more focus but lowering tech end up being faster than lower focus with more tech? What happens if I use +8 strength instead of +3 dex? You can think about these things in your head, but the best way to know the answer to a lot of these questions is just to do a few battles and see how it plays out. Sometimes you'll even realize yourself resorting to a different strategy when using a slightly different build. And eventually, you can incorporate some of these unique ideas, if possible, when you do try to make that optimal, safe and sustainable build. This is how you get good at making builds, through trial and error of different techniques. So, what I found to be the sweet spot for maximizing speed was 4 focus. 3 was invariably slower because it's weaker, and 5 and especially 6 got too many deflections to be worth it. And I'm not just making this up, believe it or not, but with enough luck, I was able to win multiple times with each type of focus, even with an abysmal win rate. And 6 focus was only able to do 102 rounds, which was hardly better than 1 focus, and worse than 3, 4, and 5 focus. With that said, I don't recommend that anyone uses any of these builds, of course, and if you are legitimately focused on farming this thing, I do have the other video out there if you've not already seen it. Otherwise, go ahead and enjoy this sort of bizarre speed battle.